So this year, I did order in some different milkweeds. And in the picture that you're seeing, it's called balloon milkweed or hairy milkweed. And a lot of it's because the seed pods are hairy or they look like a balloon. Well, just, starting out, the plant did really well. And then about a month and a half in, it started getting shoot tip borers. So these little borers that will burrow into the tips. And I got really disheartened because I told myself, I'm not growing this plant again. If I can't have the blooms and I can't have what it's bred for, I don't want it. Now, it's a tropical milkweed. It's not native. But then something started to happen. I noticed that it just started getting more aphids and more aphids. And then, I decided to go ahead and start taking a look at that plant. And then I started realizing this plant has its own ecology or environmental thing going on. And that's what I'm wanting to share with you, that when aphids hit milkweeds, step back a moment and take a look at some of the other things that could be going on. And that might be a good reason not to control the aphids. And so this is sort of my story of why I've let my aphids go. So one of the biggest benefits of a milkweed, of course, is the monarch butterfly. Everybody loves to see a monarch. And so I noticed real quickly that I had monarch eggs, which I hadn't seen before. And I was just blown away. I was excited because everywhere I looked, there were monarch eggs everywhere. And then I started seeing, of course, the caterpillars. And because I was spending so much time with the plant, I was noticing that some of these caterpillars, they start out just a couple of centimeters long. So you don't even notice them and it's hard to fathom something that small, getting a start out. But then they kept gradually getting bigger and bigger. And finally, you could see the big monarch caterpillars. But this is what everybody jumps to when we talk about beneficial insects and milkweed. They automatically think, oh, yeah, monarch caterpillar. Well, it goes so much further than that. And that's what I want to share with you. So on my cell phone, I went and got a macroscopic microscopic lens. So there's two different lenses. You put them together, it's macroscopic or a wide lens. If you take them apart, then you can have a micro lens. And so I started attaching that to my phone, and I was amazed at how much better my pictures were compared to just using the cell phone alone. And so these are some of the pictures I've been taking. So, of course, the monarch butterfly. And you can see over to the left on the picture where you see dead foliage. That is what happens on that shoot tip borer. And then in the distance, right smack dab in the middle of the picture, further out, you can start seeing some brownish black looking. That's where also the shoot tip borer happened also. And so I started looking closer, and of course, then I started seeing the ladybugs. And everybody always thinks, okay, beneficials, ladybugs are also another good one. And so, of course, the adult ladybird beetle or ladybug is on the left. And of course, the larva, or what we call the alligator, is on the right. And you can see that he's got a aphid in his mouth chowing down. So I thought that was really neat. And so a lot of these pictures are on portrait mode so that it blurs the background and I can focus on just the bug at hand. Then we have parasitic wasps. So as you can see, we've already covered a few parasites or predators that would help knock down that aphid population. Well, the parasitic wasp, it's a little, very small wasp, never know it's there. It's the picture's all the way to the right at the top, and it shows that it's parasitizing or laying an egg in one of these aphids. And once it's parasitized, the aphid swells up, turns a different color. And when the larva inside eats that aphid and then pupates, when he's ready to crawl out, he drills a hole out of the back end of the aphid and crawls out. So it's pretty cool. And so we've got several insects now going. Then we have to take a look at the lacewings. And I always knew lacewings would be present if you had aphids. But one thing that was really cool is there's 3 types of lacewings that were present, not just one. And this happens to be the brown lacewing. And so as you can see, the right-hand picture, you can see the aphid in his mouth. And then, of course, on the left, it's a different pose for him. And he's going after the aphids. Well, this is really cool. I always thought lacewings looked a certain way. Well, I seen this one and I go, well, what is this guy? Well, he is a brown lacewing. This one over to the left is a red-lipped green lacewing. The one on the right is the green lacewing. So we have three different species of lacewings on the same plant. So I was very, very fascinated by this and excited about this because honestly, I don't think that I'd ever seen any of the lacewing larvae in action, but boy, do they eat aphids. They are ferocious when it comes to aphids. And then once you start looking at the plants, you start noticing all the lacewing eggs. And so lacewing eggs are actually suspended on a filament, like a little thread that holds them away from the leaf. And it's really cool because if you see the filaments towards the top, some of them are white and some of them are gray. The gray ones are the ones that have already hatched. The white ones have not. And so you can see all throughout this picture, white ones and gray ones. And so I think that is really neat because that was the first thing I noticed about the leaves is, what are those? I've never seen those before. And once I started doing my research and looking around, did I realize that they were actually the lacewing eggs, which is really cool. Then there was also other things on there. So this is flower flies. Some people call them sweet bees. Some people call them sweat bees. Some people call them hover flies, flower flies, corn flies, lots of different names. The big thing is they're a non-stinging insect, even though they look a little beeish or waspish. But they start out, they're a little grubbish worm, and they're blind. So they roam around feeling with their mouth and tasting things in order to find these aphids. It's very fascinating to watch them move about and go after the aphids. But anyhow, the one on the left is a younger version of the one in the middle. And of course, the adult is over to the right top. And I just find that fascinating. I could go out there repeatedly throughout the day and even from day to day and watch these little guys go from a really young larva through the different end stages and finally into even the pupa. The pupa is over at the right. It's in the black circle. And so it will sit there in the resting stage until it's ready to pupate out. And it's a really cool life cycle, and watching things go is just amazing. And this is right before it pupates. And they say that these skeletons, these aphid skeletons that you see over to the right, they will actually be attached to the exterior of these worms or the larva, and it helps to camouflage them. So I thought that was pretty cool. The unfortunate part of this food web that I found on this plant is I kept noticing that my monarch larvae were dead. And they were hanging. They were just limp and hanging. And I just couldn't figure out what was going on. And then finally, one day I went out there and I actually caught these critters in the process of eating these caterpillars. And so after that, I knew exactly what was going on. This is a beneficial stink bug called the spine soldier bug. And, he is beneficial. So I had to really tell myself, don't do anything about him, leave him be. It's just part of nature. But unfortunately, caterpillars are the casualty. Now, as much as I want, like I said, I want to get rid of these guys, I left them. I moved them to a different plant. Because I didn't want them killing my caterpillars. I keep an eye out for them now. And if I find any more, I move them to a different plant, but I do not kill them. So I leave them pretty much alone, intact. But just know that when we have plants in nature and they have pest problems, just know that there are things working in nature. There's that food web, there's predators, there's parasitoids out there that are working in this plant world to control some of the pests.